nice is it to just be able to be back here at camp and throwing like you are, kind of being at this point of the progression?
Yeah, it's good to change the scenery for sure. We were, you know, happy that the way we saw the program kind of play out once I had surgery was that it would put me in a normal-ish spring training routine, and then we kind of helped nudge that along where I'd come down here and almost feel like I'm just a part of camp. So yeah, the sun helps. The warm is good for the elbow and the arm, so it's been a good process so far.
Alex said you threw a lot of bullpens this winter. When did you start really feeling comfortable, like you could let it go, like pretty much normal?
Yeah, I don't know that we're even to normal yet. Normal's a, especially for me, a tough term to really bring into context. But you know, it's the process is that we put a big focus on just making incremental steps. So you don't want to expose yourself to too much of a stress, you know, too big of a jump all at once, right? So making sure that when we're at the end of catch play, we're in a good spot to make the jump to bullpens. We're not going to get sore or anything from that. You know, expecting bullpens to be at a certain level, and then that'll be the same case going to live BP. So I'm moving well. Done a lot of work in the lab, for lack of a better term. So yeah, I mean, things are in a good spot.
Because you had gone through it before, how much easier was it this time to know what you had to be intentional about or how to be patient through the process?
Yeah, you know, I was telling somebody just yesterday about, you know, all the work you do, you know, sports psychology realm, mechanically, stuff in the weight room even. I think it's important to remember that there's obviously like a short-term influence on yourself from doing all that, but there's also the concept of you're creating a database to rely upon. So recording all that information, and whether it's because of a rehab process or it's something else, you're going to hopefully come back to that and rely on those experiences and that information. So it's been different, just different place, different surgery, different, you know, I'm different, older, all that kind of stuff. So, but absolutely that experience has been instrumental.
Yesterday, Ronald said he was about 90 to 95%. Is there a way that you can kind of gauge where you're at from a percentage basis?
No, I don't really think in those terms. You know, I don't know what 100% is. So, and we're not very good at, just athletes in general, of assessing our percentage effort. If you ask somebody to run it, you ask an Olympic runner to run 85%, I don't know that they're going to really do that well, you know? It's so subjective and dependent upon the day, the context. But, like I said earlier, we've been focused on making those incremental improvements. You know, trying to take one step each day, 1%, that kind of focus. And I feel like we're in, like I said, a good kind of spring training spot. We have to do things a little differently just because it's still a rehab process, but I don't feel too dissimilar from where I'd be this time of year in spring training.
Obviously, we were watching you throughout spring training, but you draw quite a crowd from your teammates. What do you make that they're watching your bullpen as much as we are?
I think they're just bored, mostly. And they want to see if I'll say something crazy while I'm throwing. I've been known to do that. But yeah, I mean, they're obviously supportive group. So, you know, they have been, I mean, guys have been texting me and asking how I'm doing. That obviously means a ton. So I know they probably will get sick of me being around once I'm back and bothering them all the time, but they must miss me right now. So that definitely feels good.
When you're back in this rotation, what's the ceiling for this unit?
It's high. You know, I think this group is especially focused just on the process. You know, we've more so than any that I've been a part of here. I think you've got a lot of independent, focused guys who are very in tune with the purpose behind what they're doing and understand the concept of, you know, getting 180 plus innings, and we're in this for the long haul and trying to peak at the right time, and that comes down to just focusing on the present moment, each day having a purpose and a good plan, and consequently I think we have a very high ceiling.
The last couple of years we've heard a lot about how baseball's crazy or the postseason's a crapshoot. That might be true, but how do you stay within the balance of accountability and controlling what you can while not excuse making?
It takes practice. I mean, you're talking about literally, like, you know, that's sports psychology. I mean, that's why, you know, myself and a lot of guys will train that muscle just like you would anything else. Mindfulness is a skill, and learning to control what you can control is also a skill, and making sure you're defining those things correctly is important. I think a lot of times guys will try to, push off a whole concept to something they can't control when there are certainly elements they can, and vice versa. So, yeah, I mean, ultimately what you're after is honesty. I think I've spoke about this before, and when you're not happy about the outcome, ideally you've put in a process together that allows you to look at it and say, well, here's what I've got to do to hopefully put myself in a better position to achieve a better outcome. So, and like I said, I think this group is in a good spot to do that.
Did you work out at Maven all winter? And who were you working out with?
Yeah, I was in Truist a lot. I would throw my bullpens at Maven. I've collected a good database there. They've got a lot of technology that's very useful for this process. But it was mostly Ronald, Joe, and I just walking around, parking in the handicap spot. So at Truist Park.
Do you feel like you have to maybe hold yourself back a little bit at times? Like, do you feel like when you're starting to feel really good that you could throw more, do more?
Yeah, it's a fine balance for sure. And that's the training staff is plenty of experience with these process, so they do a good job of making sure that I don't run out and hurt myself every day or do too little. Like I said, I think that's the thing that gets lost in the process of making those incremental steps is you need to make sure the floor is coming up more so than anything. Yeah, I think that's definitely the hardest part, and that's kind of where we are now is understanding you've made it this far, you've checked a lot of these boxes that let's flip the switch to competing, and that usually having done this before, that brings out that last 5%, if you want to put a number on it, that, for lack of a better term, gets you into that competitive state is just focusing less on what's going on the rubber and a little bit more what's going on at the plate, trying to produce outcomes.
What have you learned about yourself just physically and mentally going through 2 major injuries in your career?
Yeah, I mean a lot. I think just, I keep saying it, but the process is what I love ultimately. I think, there's talk about like mastering a craft or something. People talk about 10,000 hours. Mastery is something that doesn't really have a destination. It's hard to define it. So you don't really know when it happens. You just know that somebody's a master at something. So I'm not calling myself a master, but I think that's what I've kind of been able to focus in on is there were no outcomes to define myself. That identity, that ego was not fed by anything on the field. So you're spending a lot of time with yourself. Delayed gratification is absolutely the main component of a rehab process. So just trying to find ways to get better and ultimately enjoy that progress and that learning process.
Can you tell the difference this many months into it from TJ surgery? I know you're a lot older now too.
Yeah, I mean it's different for sure. I mean I try not to compare them one to one like that because it's just I don't know that it's that helpful. I think the lessons learned from the process overall are important, but yeah, different surgeries. Like I said, I'm a different body. I'm a different person. I'm older. Starting to feel that more and more. But yeah, so I feel really good about it. I feel really good with where we are. The training staff, strength staff have been unbelievable. So their experience is, hard to value.
Is it a different feel here with Max, Charlie, Travis all gone?
Yeah, it's a lot different. Super happy for those guys that, Max obviously getting a great deal. He's talked to him the other day. He's liking where he is and he's having a good time and feel happy for him. And I'm just glad Chuck kept playing. So, he needs to be out there. But yeah, all those guys were, I'm consider myself very fortunate to have played with them and learned from them, and excited to see them.
Alex says that you may pitch in the game here this spring. I know there aren't any. You're not going to say any definite timetables, but is that like one of the goals? And then, do you, in the back of your mind, have a set goal for when you'll?
No, I don't have anything like that. And the point of this point of the process is not very defined that way. There is absolutely a schedule on paper. It's a conservative estimate, but it's mostly for reference. At this point, we're going on, like I said earlier, we've kind of flipped the switch to being competitive and practicing the skill more so than rehabbing the injury. And so that takes time. And when you haven't done it in a year, it takes a little bit more time. So basically, it's judgment calls when we get to, within a safe reason based on the original protocol. But when we get to a point where we say, all right, I think we're ready for a live, and that's what we need to do, that's what we'll do. And then I would love to pitch in spring training games just because you can roll innings, you can do stuff that make it easier to increase pitch count and that kind of stuff. But of course, we want to be smart. We want to be do what's best for the long run.
Last year in spring training, there was a big storyline of you adding a new pitch to your arsenal. I know obviously you're still trying to get back to just getting the rotation, but how has that been, kind of keeping that new pitch in your arsenal?
Yeah, I mean I'm throwing it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I haven't placed a ton of focus, mostly out of necessity, with my off speed. I don't think that they've really come along pretty well. I think we did a good job of integrating those into the workload. So, like I said, now it's mostly just trying to unlock that last bit of intensity and moving free and easy, being repeatable, and then still increasing quantity and recovering from that intensity. So just getting the body used to moving fast and eventually get it onto a 5-day routine.
Spencer, what did you learn about the two-time repairs and like where the industry is at in terms of advancements and stuff like that for guys who are undergoing, you know, a UCL repair the second time around?
Yeah, I mean, it's just so different. It's hard to compare guy to guy. There's so many different reasons that you would need elbow surgery. I think it's sometimes hard to do because it requires a lot of honesty, and humility to try to understand why you got hurt. I think in my specific case, there was definitely some stuff I couldn't control, but I think if we're trying to be pragmatic and think for the long term, it's good to try to highlight some of those things or find those things. So I don't know. I think ultimately, I know that if this were 20 years ago, I probably wouldn't have had this surgery and I would be a lot different pitcher. So I'm grateful that Dr. Meister and all else in the industry are doing the work they're doing.
And you feel like the evolution will continue from here and just maybe it'll get even better and better for guys, both first and second time guys?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I think there's certain parts of the baseball industry are moving at different speeds at the moment. I think the amateur, we can sit down for this one, but the amateur baseball circuit is, you know, where it's at, and college. I mean, there's just so many components that would go into injury numbers and injury prevention. So I think that now we've got to start looking, you know, into our daily behavior. You know, not philosophically, not velocity, not that kind of stuff. That's not going away, nor should we want it to. But just how can we manage workload? How can we be smarter? How can we utilize feedback, both visual and you know, data-driven, to be healthier? And that takes time to conduct those experiments and feel good about that process.
Last one, guys.
Seems like most elite athletes get to that point of realizing process over outcome. I know you've worked with Corey for years, but I'm curious if there's a point where that set in for you, either years ago or whenever it was, where you really kind of that sunk in.
Yeah, I think what you're ultimately talking about is defining why you do something. It's the purpose. And for me, I mean, I've never had motivation issues with baseball. Of course, there's times where you're discouraged, you're not as motivated for a number of reasons, but ultimately there's that inherent love for the game that I have that makes it easier for me. But I think, you know, reverting back to the mastery concept, I mean, I think that's really what it's about. It's just understanding every component of your life is about improvement and optimization, and whether that you can identify a one-to-one correlation to how that improves your skill at baseball, I don't think is instrumental. I think, you know, everybody's life journey here is about just being a better person, right? So in any way you can, and that's something that I think I've really come to understand is what I enjoy, is just finding ways to be better in any way. Because if I do one little thing better, I mean, it gives me that much better chance of being successful in the baseball field. So yeah.
Thanks, Spencer.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys.